like to thank everyone for joining us for our Digital Services Forum this week. Our leader, John, is out on a much due holiday vacation, so he's asked me to kind of step in and be a little bit of a master of ceremonies. Just to remind everyone that may be looking at this for the first time or that is joining us again, the idea of this services forum is to talk about different approaches to leverage the platform better, utilizing the data, the processes, methodologies to make all of you successful. As we're going through this, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I know that myself and AJ is the blonde that I see on the speaker. AJ, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Amanda Justice. I go by AJ. I'm about 10 weeks into my ServiceNow journey. I came from a ServiceNow customer that I've been a ServiceNow customer for the last 10 years. And I sit in our enterprise architecture group as a field CTO. And here to kind of support Michelle because I have actually deployed these within a customer a few times now. And so I might be able to kind of share my perspectives on lessons learned and successes I've had over the course of my career. But I'm basically Michelle's wing woman today to help support the discussion.
Great, thank you so much for that. And I forgot to introduce myself. I probably know some of you guys, but Rachel Trombetta, I'm an enterprise architect, field CTO working on the eastern half of the US. My expertise is really in manufacturing. AJ is huge and very humble about hers in the utility space. I've got a little bit of that for working for General Electric for 13 and then retail space. And then without further ado, I want to hand it over to Dr. Michelle Super from our European team and give her a chance to introduce herself and give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. And Michelle, if you could also let the team know, would you rather them come off mute and you answer questions in line or wait till the end? That's your choice today.
It's probably easier if we wait for questions to the end. If you have any questions in between, then feel free to put them in the chat and we'll see what we can do.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. Thank you for having me here. It's always good to give a webinar and share knowledge. We're going to be talking today about application portfolio rationalization and a management approach using ServiceNow. I'm going to go into a more theoretical, more practical way of doing enterprise architecture. So it's not all going to be about the Now platform today. We're going to be looking at techniques that you can use within your own organizations to help to rationalize your application portfolio and set it up ready for success with the Now platform. If it'll let me change, there we go. Right, so an introduction to me, first of all, so you know who I am. Dr. Michelle Supper, and I'm a Senior Advisory Executive Architect in the EMEA Enterprise Architecture team. I created a methodology called guided architecture, which some of you might have experienced already with ServiceNow Enterprise Architects. We've now trained nearly 190 enterprise and platform architects across ServiceNow in this methodology to help our customers. And how did I get to this point? Well, the PhD is in astrophysics, but in terms of my professional career, I started off as a system architect with the Ministry of Defence over here in the UK and the Secret Service. Designed all kinds of things I'm not allowed to talk about. And then I went on to become a consultant enterprise architect to government, public and private sector. Before I joined ServiceNow, I was at the Open Group standards body where I was director of 3 enterprise architecture standards forums. Looking after 1,000 enterprise architects and helping them to write the standards that we all use. And through that and a lot of years of working with the Open Group generally, I've now been contributing author to a book, 8 standards, several guides and white papers, including IT for IT version 3, which was released last week. I have been doing architecture for 13 years. I'm still learning, and I'd like to share all this experience with you. So, also a shameless plug, please do join the Enterprise Architecture Forum on LinkedIn. Here's a link in the chat. I'll let you in when I finish speaking. This is a place where we have conversation, where we share knowledge about enterprise architecture techniques, so please do join. Now, an overview to what we're going to be talking about today. So first of all, we're going to have a look at a high-level approach to application rationalization. This is something which a lot of organizations struggle with. Organizations of a certain age or a certain size tend to accumulate large numbers of applications. So what I'm going to do is take you through a high-level approach to helping you see the wood for the trees. How do you start to handle that situation when you have more applications than you can manage easily? Then we're going to be looking at transformation, so patterns for migration onto the Now platform, and then how to do ongoing portfolio management, so how to use the ServiceNow APM package and the benefits that package can give you alongside other packages that sit on the Now platform, and also how to use an enterprise architecture tool alongside the APM package and the benefits that gives. So start off with a high-level approach to application rationalization. So there are four little phases in this process as I envisage it. The first one is discovery. The second one, quick wins and opportunities. Then we move into transform, build and learn. And then finally into continual improvement. And if you follow this process as part of a digital transformation with ServiceNow, then it's possible to get architect-to-architect support throughout your journey. So at the beginning, in pre-sales and the beginning of your transformation, you'd have help from enterprise architecture, my team and others like me. Then you'd move across into platform architects as you started to do implementation and integration onto the platform. And finally, you move across into customer success architects who can help you to get as much value as possible out of the platform. So this isn't a journey that you have to make alone. And let's have a look at each of these phases in a little bit more detail. So if we start off with discovery, this is where you start to gather your candidates for rationalization, where you understand, and build the list of all the applications that you want to consider as part of the transformation, as part of the rationalization activity. And as part of this, you want to be understanding different characteristics of those applications. So what do they do? What is their function? Do you know their lifecycle status? Are there users and owners, and how many users are there associated with each of those applications? What do you know about their licensing and the development and support costs, and all these other different characteristics? The more contextual information you have in relation to an application, the more easily you can make strategic decisions about it. And so discovery is something that used to be done just walking around the floor plate of your office and asking people, what application do you have, what do you use? These days we have on the Now platform discovery and visibility, part of ITOM, which would help you to automatically find out and crawl through your networks and find out what applications you have and get a lot of this information, which really does help a lot. Second one would be quick wins and opportunities. So once you've got that list from the first phase, you can analyze it and identify quick wins for immediate retirement. What we have here, is in the picture is the low-hanging fruit. It's the way it's often referred to. It's at this phase you can start to look at how the Now platform could possibly replace applications that you have, which could then be retired. You can start to make decisions about how you're going to integrate the apps that you want to keep and how you're going to align them with the platform. And you can also start to identify apps which are suitable for redevelopment as custom apps on the platform. So there are different options that you can take with applications. So this is why it's important to first get that big list and understand them completely, and then you can start to make those strategic decisions. When you've decided your priority order for actions against a business capability, you can look at how much value you're going to get, cost savings. Of course, don't forget there will be costs associated with rationalization activity, and that's also something you have to bear in mind. And At this stage, when you're starting to scope out the scale of the work that you're going to do, this is the sort of phase of a rationalization project when you might want to identify a delivery partner who can assist with the decision making and with the implementation work. The next phase would be transform, build and learn. This is where if you can retire applications, you do so, and that really does help to simplify your landscape, where you start to integrate any applications that you want to keep with using the integration hub into the Now platform, and where those candidates that you think you can rebuild can be rebuilt on the Now platform with the App Engine. And to support this, there are things that can be done within your organization. So you can start to upskill application development teams and line of business developers. They will know your business better than any external organization would. And so it helps to have these skills in-house. It also provides continuity for when things need to be maintained. You can create a center of excellence for ServiceNow, so low-code application development to make sure that these things can be maintained into the future. And as stuff starts to be built up onto the Now platform, this is when you can start to deploy machine learning and artificial intelligence enhancements that will help you to realize even greater efficiencies. And the more platform you use, the more efficiencies you can get, because you'll be able to share the data cleanly across the platform. And finally, continuing improvement. So this phase that you start to use the Now platform to monitor and manage this application landscape that you've now created for yourself. So if you started off with, let's say, chaos, thousands of applications that you had a lot of legacy things that need to be removed, by this point, you will have tidied up your application landscape quite considerably. You now can see the wood for the trees. Everything in your landscape is relevant. Everything there is giving value back to your organization. So now you want to maintain the health of that. And this is where you can start to use parts of the Now platform, things like the visibility to keep a view of everything. You can use the APM to manage your applications, and also things like HAM and SAM, so that's hardware asset management, that's software asset management, which will help continuously to inform strategic decisions, enhance that business continuity, reduce your costs, and improve agility. Agility is something that a lot of people want, but they're not sure how to get it. And so a way of looking at this, if you have too many applications and you're not sure what you can change, because if you change something, then all your systems might collapse, that is going to bring in a certain fear, a certain level of risk, right? The more clearly you can understand your systems, the easier it is to make a change, and the easier it is to be agile and adjust to fit conditions in the market. So simplicity is king here. To support all this, review your architecture governance. So look at the principles that you're using, look at your governance boards, make sure that they're effective. Establish application request methodology to make sure that applications don't start to proliferate again, so you don't have many more, and start to create that citizen development culture so that people will, instead of going out to find and buy an application, will start to think, how can I use the data I have and develop an application easily, or a report that will help me to get the response that I need. Okay, so that's the first part. That's a high-level approach that I would take to rationalization. So next I'm going to talk about a way of triaging applications. So let's say you're in a situation where you found you've got 2,500 applications in a list, and you're not quite sure what to do with them. It's very hard to to even get started when you're faced with this huge amount. And I've seen customers with more than that. So if you're in this situation, there is a way through, and this is how to do it. So I'm going to share with you an approach which I developed and used at the UK Ministry of Justice to help to rationalise the applications that they used in their prison service. And it's very simple. It's based on grids, which we'll go through in a moment. And I've extended it out to the Now platform so that we can start to very quickly understand and triage that big list of applications we make in discovery, and then start to make the decisions that we need to move onto the Now platform. Okay, so the first of these grids in the method is this one. This is the Strategic Relevance and Impact Grid. It was developed by McFarlane, and it was introduced by him in the Harvard Business Review in 1984. So, this has been established for a long time now. But in the Strategic Relevance and Impact Grid, what you do is you just draw a quadrant graph like this, and you distribute the applications within it, depending on what they are, what their relevance to your organization is, and their health. Well, okay, so ideally you want your applications to be in the green boxes at the top. If an application is strategic, then it's vital to the whole enterprise. These applications are going to be your top priority. These are the ones you're going to fund first, if you're limited in your budget. If one of your strategic applications goes down, your whole organization will fail. So we saw this yesterday when WhatsApp fell over. They must have attacked some strategic application, and then the whole of WhatsApp went down. That will be a strategic application. Factory or operational is vital to a part of the enterprise. Your second priority, the things that you fund second. These will be things like an HR tool, for example. It's vital to the HR department, but not to the rest of the organization. So it's a factory tool. Something which is in turnaround is a new application which is on the horizon. It's something that you don't have yet. It might be an application or a platform or some new functionality. You can see it coming. It's going to have a strategic impact. It's something you have to be aware of, but it's not actually in your landscape at the moment. But there's a place for it to be put, and that's in turnaround. And support is something which is non-essential, it's low business value, and it's something you can consider outsourcing or divesting. So often, if you've had an organization that's been running for a few years, a few decades maybe, the organization might have changed. You'll have legacy things. These are, or the organization has, it's not looking in that particular area anymore, but it's still got applications that are relevant to something it doesn't do. That would be one of these things. Okay, these are the low-hanging fruit. This is the support box. Okay, so here are some applications distributed within this grid. Okay, I'm not going to consider real applications, so I'm just putting some examples in here. This is how you do it. Just name the applications in each grid. It is really that simple. Okay, the second grid I'm going to show you is this one. This is an application portfolio optimization grid. This is the one that looks at the fit and the health of the of the applications. So healthy applications which are low risk, good fit, business wise and technically sit up in the healthy applications quadrant. That's the only place an application wants to be. If an application isn't healthy, it might sit in functional reengineering. So this is what happens when a business has changed, but the applications haven't caught up yet. They need to be adjusted in order to better fit the needs of the business. So perhaps a process has changed and a process workflow has to be redesigned with an application, then that application will require functional reengineering. If it's sitting in technical reengineering, then it means that something has to be done to the application to maintain its health. So perhaps it has to be migrated to a different platform, the infrastructure needs upgrading, it might need a security patch, that kind of a thing. So something technically needs to be done to it to bring it into health, to move the application from technical up to healthy. So that's what technical engineering is. Retirement candidates, again, this is for legacy stuff and for old things. These are the applications that are high risk, they're poor business fit, poor technical fit. And this is where you need to consider what to do with them. It's very rare that you can simply turn something off. I was talking with customers this morning who weren't sure how an application connected to its users, and they said, oh, we could just turn it off and see who shouts loudest. And of course, that is one way of doing it. But there are other things to consider as well. So for example, If you have data that's sitting inside that application, that data might need to be decommissioned properly. It might need to be transferred to somewhere else or archived somewhere. So, this is how to, you can't just turn these things off. Think carefully about how you're going to retire an application cleanly and make sure that it doesn't cause damage. So if we take our applications and distribute them again, okay, here we are. So I've distributed some applications. And this is the fun bit now. So now we can start to combine the grids together. So when we start to combine them together, this is when we get real deep insights. This is why I use multiple grids. So if you take this, for example, we can say, oh, look, strategically, these are the applications which are strategic. Only one of them is healthy, and 3 of them need some re-engineering, either technical or functional. Okay, so if this was the result of your grid, then your strategic applications would be your top priority. This one would be fine, it's healthy, but then you'd have to work on these immediately because you don't want those to fall over. So you'd fix them. Then you move into your factory. They all need some functional or technical re-engineering there as well. And then we've got the support where you can retire something and look at ways of retiring the others as well. Okay, so it's a way quickly to triage things, and this works really well in a workshop type environment as well. So you can sit with people together and even with post-it notes on quadrants and just quickly get through thousands of applications and understand what you need to do with them. If you want to get things more visible, you can make things easy to see if you color code them. You can also add another dimension if you want. So here we've got ticks and dots. So what you have here is, let's say you know who the owner of the application is, you can put a tick next to it, and if there's a dot, then you don't know who the owner is. When I did this at the Ministry of Justice, I found that several applications had no owner, and that implied that they weren't being managed actively. And so that represents a very high risk. So this is a way you can quickly get a grasp of your application landscape. So there you go. And the final one, this is where we start to extend it out into the Now platform itself. So this is where you have to start making decisions about what you're going to do with those applications. And I've given you 4 options here. You can either replace, okay, so you can replace the application entirely by a package on the Now platform or a function on the Now platform. And if you do that, then you get the value of being able to simplify your landscape. You get to retire an application or several applications at a time. And you get to use more of the platform functionality, which if you're a customer, you've paid for, so you might as well use. Okay, migrate is something where you can't simply replace it automatically. You have to start thinking about how you're going to do that. So you might have to start moving data across first or functionality across. So there's decisions to be made and some action that needs to be taken to migrate something actively across onto the platform. A custom app is something that's going to be requiring some development work. So it's worth keeping a note of the things that are going to need custom apps, because that way you can start to get your development teams tasked up properly and schedule which path you're going to take to get to get all those things developed properly together, and which order you're going to make them in. And finally, keep. So that is, you've got an application, you really like it, it can't be changed, and so you're going to keep it. And now there's a choice of how you're going to integrate it with the platform if necessary. Or how are you going to make sure that its functionality doesn't overlap with anything that the platform is doing. Okay. So that's the grids. So if you were faced with that big decision, you've got thousands of applications, I'd recommend using these grids. They can quickly help you to triage things down And using the different quadrants and cross-referencing them by combining the grids, you get a really deep insight into what to do. And from there, you can start to build a roadmap of activity, how you're going to move forward and which things are you going to retire, what are you going to update, and what will you migrate, what will you integrate. Okay. So next thing, here you've got patterns for migration to the platform. So often we will think about our applications just by themselves. If you are an end user within an organization, you'll be looking very much at one application. Your focus is on that application. You might not realize that there are perhaps a dozen applications within your organization that do the same thing. And so, if in that case you have fragments of functionality, and you might have fragmented processes as well. So let's look at these two. Let's look at these two patterns, and I'll show you how, with this, you can start to make big leaps towards moving onto the platform. I've got some nice little animations to help us on this journey. So the first pattern I'd like you to consider is fragments of functionality. So here we have a situation where maybe there's a big application that your organization has got. And let's say it was bought 10 years ago. As time has gone on, you found that this big application didn't cover all the functionality that was needed. So over time, your developers have created little add-ons, little plugins to this big application. So you now have something that looks a bit like a COVID virus, where you have the big application and the smaller ones all interfacing with it. And the big application might also be feeding off a data source. So I'm sure this kind of landscape looks quite familiar to you. This pattern would be familiar. So how do we move this onto the platform? I have dealt with customers who've looked at this kind of arrangement, and their immediate focus is to think, we'll move the small pieces onto the platform. If you do that, then all of these arrows here, all these interfaces, will have to be recreated. So you're still going to be interfacing that big application, integrating it many times to the Now platform to do all these different things, the different pieces. So maybe not the best approach. Here's a different way. So if we take the Now platform and we take a Now platform package, something that can replicate this, one approach would be to transfer the function of the big application, if you can, to the platform. If you do that, then you can then move that across, and now you have the chance to move the functionality of the smaller applications, the plugins, and move those to the platform as well. There you go. And then you can integrate the data source with the Now platform. So if you're in the situation where you have this big application and there's smaller pieces around it, if you map those out ahead of time, you'll be able to then move them across as a piece into the Now platform. That gives you a serious opportunity to do real rationalization of many applications at once, and also the potential to save money. If you only take the small plugins across, then you're still going to be maintaining that larger application and the Now platform together and paying for both. If it's possible for you to move the big application across, then it's a chance to rationalize away and retire that big application along with all of the different plugins as well, and bring that all into one piece. So well worth considering this pattern. The next one I'd like you to consider is fragmented processes. So you might have a process and it's fragmented across many applications. So these arrows down here represent a process, and these dots represent the applications that are running to make this process happen. So think about finding all these different applications here. And when I say find the applications, I do mean all of them. Okay, so do fill in the gaps. You might find that people are using Excel spreadsheets, macros, little plugins, all kinds of workarounds if systems aren't working properly. So do make sure that you have got all of the of the applications in a process. And when you know all of them and you can map the data flow all the way through, now you have a real opportunity to automate that whole process on the Now platform. So you can take what all of these things are doing. If you have an appropriate package on the Now platform that can handle it, then you can transfer the function of those applications to the platform and automate the whole thing end to end. Of course, this is just an example of one small process. It's possible to do this across entire value streams. You can, if you want to do value stream analysis, that's a very good way of looking at across multiple business capabilities within your organization and rationalizing many applications at once and automating into one end-to-end process, one end-to-end workflow, which can massively improve the efficiency of what you're doing in the business. So there you go. So now we've transferred it across the platform. Okay, so that brings us to here. We've now first been in this huge chaotic forest of applications. We've rationalized away, we've seen the wood for the trees. We've moved a lot of stuff onto the platform. So now we're at a place where the landscape is clean, it's tidy, we have just the applications that we want and they're all giving value to us. So now what we want to do is maintain the health of our application landscape into the future. So this is where we can start to use things like ServiceNow's APM, and if we like, we can also extend that use out to use the APM alongside an enterprise architecture tool. So I'm going to show you how these things work very briefly. Okay, so what does ServiceNow's APM module do? So the APM sits inside the CMDB, so the database that's central to the Now platform. And what it does is it brings together the tactical and operational information on the applications and their current status. Okay, very important is their current status. It does not do future state modeling. Okay, the APM is going to provide you with a dashboard, and on that dashboard you can see what applications you have and how they're doing, and that gives you information like the owner's users, the costs, the life cycle stage, the associated risk, all those things which we mentioned before in discovery. So APM can also associate applications with each other, so it can tell you what's connected, and with other concepts, and it can start to do calculations as well. So it shows you how the applications connect. It can show you how applications connect to your business capabilities, and here you have a choice. So if you have your own business capability map, you can feed that in, and it will show you can wire it up to show how they connect, or you can use the built-in capability map that's been derived from the APQC standard, which comes with APM. What would an enterprise architecture repository tool do? Okay, so enterprise architecture tools are separate to the Now platform, third parties, but they provide different functionality and they can really help. So as an enterprise architect, I advocate the use of an EA repository tool. I can't see how an enterprise architect of a large organization can be managed effectively without one these days. So there are several tools that can be integrated with the Now platform directly to the CMDB. These ones are BizDesign, InSpire, and LeanIX. All of these have got integration apps available. And the nice thing about these tools is that they give you visualization of your enterprise architecture. They bring that data to life for you. They help you to analyze it, and they enable you to do a future state design. They help you to map out what you want ahead of time and test things before you put it into play. So all of these tools will support different modeling disciplines. You can do things like solution architecture, security architecture. You can map out your business processes. So if you're currently using a different tool to map business process, that's another rationalization you can do if you bring in an enterprise architecture tool, because they all support BPMN. And actually, when you're business processes are within your enterprise architecture repository tool, you can then connect them to other parts of your architecture, and then they become really valuable. So you can say, this capability supports these business processes. You can say this data, if you have your data flows in there, this data is associated with this process, these applications, these people, all of these things can be connected together. For me, the value of an enterprise architecture is in the way that it connects data together. So, the more data you can put in there, the better. You can start to do that information data modeling, you can look at value streams, you can do journey mapping for your customers, strategy modeling, and so on. So there's lots of things that you can do with an EA tool. And of course, they give you visualization, dashboarding, and other tools, other functionality. Okay. With applications, they help you to draw out landscapes so you can actually visually see how things connect together. That's very useful. And communication diagrams to show how the data is flowing. So all of these are helpful. Enterprise architectural enables you to identify which of your business capabilities are aligned to which of your goals. It's really important to make sure, if you're doing any change, that any change you make aligns to the strategic intent of your organization. So if you can map those things back, then all the better. And it helps you to plan those target states and the transition states, and that'll help you to optimize the application portfolio. And it helps you to establish a common decision-making basis. So rather than just making a decision based on a sentiment, you can actually have evidence, and all these things can be used to support business cases. So that's the case for an EA repository tool. Of course, when you have a tool which integrates with the CMDB, the CMDB of the Now platform can gather the information. So you'll use things like discovery, visibility, service mapping on the Now platform. Fill up that information on the CMDB. You can pass all that information live straight to your repository tool to keep it up to date. So it becomes a very powerful partnership if you have these two things in place. So a quick guide to the abbreviations that we use, because you'll need them for the next diagram. I'll just let you read those for a moment. These are different packages that sit on the Now platform. There'll be a pop quiz later. Okay, so here's a diagram. So here's APM, right? So the bare minimum or the basic standard would be this piece here for APM. There's the APM package, and it provides the dashboard. The APM sits inside a CMDB. Okay, so that would be the minimum part. What you can do though is you can use other packages on the Now platform to support the use of the APM, and the more pieces that you have, the more contextual information you get. It enhances the data that you have within the APM, and you get a much better picture. So, for example, the SPM is going to give you the demands and the projects. So with that, you can start to make an application roadmap, and all the information is going to go into CMDB. If you have IRM, then that's going to feed in all the information that you need about risks, policies, controls, penetration testing, and so on. If you have ITAM SAM HAM, that's going to give you all the information you need about your technology portfolio, your lifecycle data. ITOM with discovery and service mapping is really key to this, and that's going to feed in the application list and the relationships and between the applications and the instances of ServiceNow that you have. DevOps give development information, and there's also a line back here as well. So the APM dashboard can push things back here into DPM, which will help you to then build out a roadmap of implementation tasks, and then to task individual roles or people to go and do those things. Okay. So all of this works together. So let's see what happens. So if you just, I'm not saying at any point that you should get all of the things on the platform. Of course, you're welcome to do that. I'm more than happy to. But if you can pick and choose the pieces that you need. So let's say you use APM and CMDB, then they will provide the enterprise architecture tool. If you connect it, they will give you CMDB content, and you have to manually input everything else. But just with this bare minimum, you will still be able to create as-is and to-be views of your application landscape. If you add in on top of this the ITOM discovery and service mapping, then you also have the populated application inventory and all the relationships that you need between the applications and the instances. And with this, the enterprise architecture tool will be able to give you populated repository, landscape, portfolio catalog, communication diagram that shows how all those applications are connected together and what data is flowing between them, and service mapping. Add in SPM, and now you've got all those roadmaps. So now, if you have a tool which has a two-way integration, you'll be able to map out and plan what you want to do with your to-be view, and then pass all those tasks back from the enterprise architecture tool into the Now platform to be scheduled and actioned by real people and actually implement things. If you add in ITAM, SAM, and HAM, this is all the things that you need to manage your technology portfolio. So with all of that, you can use your enterprise architecture tool to start creating detailed application management dashboards, heat maps, things that you can use to plan and manage all your IT assets. A lot of this can be done on directly on the APM dashboard as well, so it's not entirely dependent on having an EA tool for that part. IRM will give you risk policies and controls and risk assessments, and all of this risk information. What are heat maps? Okay, so we've got a question in the chat. A heat map is when you have a diagram, let's say, and you make the diagram just black and white. You can then color parts of that diagram to indicate different characteristics. So you might heat map a diagram to show costs of applications or numbers of users or where is the risk in this system. And it's a really good visual way of seeing immediately where things need attention. That's what a heat map is. Okay, so if you add in all your IRM data, so you've got your risks, then an EA tool can give you risk management data dashboards and risk overlays on other diagrams. Really good, actually, if you're doing GDPR mapping and you're looking at your applications, and then you map those applications with the data flows, and then you say which of these data flows are GDPR sensitive, and then these you can show all this on a diagram, which makes your security architects very happy, because then they know where they need to focus their attention. And finally, DPM sits within the Now platform, and what this does is it brings together all the information that you have, and it allows you to see all the information that you have in your IT assets and to monitor your IT operations on an ongoing basis. So a way of looking at this, the Now platform maps exactly what you have now, what exists on your network, and the EA tool can be used to map what will exist, or what you're thinking about. It's where you can start to plan things. Okay, so your options, your development options, your potential to-be views, all of that stuff can be quite happily mapped out into an enterprise architecture tool, and your day-to-day management of IT can be done direct in the Now platform. So what are the benefits? So if we're looking at the benefits of using the Now APM package with an enterprise architecture tool, most of these EA tools now are cloud hosted, so they're all online. If you have, obviously the Now platform is as well. And so what you have then is two tools which are cloud hosted. There's a frequent, easy upgrade cadence. So these things can be maintained easily. You get a single source of truth if you're mapping everything out of the CMDB, and it also encourages you to put all your data into the CMDB and align better to the CSDM. So if you populate that CMDB, make sure that's your single source of truth as far as possible, and then use the integration applications that we have to go into those EA tools, and they can automatically populate that repository for you from that source of truth and keep it up to date. So anytime anything changes in your landscape, it will update the repository for you. It gives you visibility of your current assets, okay, your whole global application estate, and any other platforms you have there, and your, so it's, and all your services. So it's a really good, quick, easy way of maintaining your enterprise architecture. And having all of this visibility enables you to start planning how to simplify your landscape and really rationalize those application technologies. When you can see what you have, then you can make decisions about it. When you have too many processes or processes at cross purposes, your business is not going to be efficient. If you can see where those processes are, if you can defragment them, automate them, and get them flowing through the platform, then things will get better. And having the A tool enables you to do that strategic planning for the future. So if you're looking about where should data be mastered, you can make a clean delineation. You can say that current data, existing things can be mastered on the platform. Any future state, any road mapping, anything which doesn't exist for real, it's just an idea, that stuff can be mastered in an enterprise architecture tool. Okay. In terms of controlling governance processes, you get total visibility if you do this. So you get to see all of your applications. There's nowhere to hide. Controls are associated with the applications. You can align your business to your strategy and visualize that. And it makes it much easier to adhere to principles and constraints. So if you're running, I can't read all of that, Louis. Sorry, I will do in a moment. If you're running a good governance strategy and you're running your applications through APM, then you can start to combine those things. So if you can use the information that you have either through the APM or through your EA tool to support your governance processes. And these things are extensible, so you continue to get value over time from both. You can continue to extend your use of the platform, and you can extend the breadth and depth of the enterprise architecture model that you have in the EA tool. So basically what I'm saying is you get the best of both worlds if you use these things together. The platform gives you the visibility, the repository gives you the visualization. And between those two things, you get to see what you have in your organization, you get to manage it more easily. And that whirlwind of a presentation comes to an end there. So now I can take questions.
Are we to come off mute then to ask?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I put it in the chat, but effectively during your presentation, which was awesome, you had talked about the fragmented processes. And so, yeah, that happens. But in ServiceNow, not part of APM, but just, well, it's part of the business app table. On the form, you have an architecture type field. And the idea is you select one of the choices being architecture host. Then you have to select the platform application. So, sorry, one of the platform hosts would be the selection of that field. And then it makes mandatory the other field where you have to select the actual platform application, which is a reference field. I think back to the business app. So you're linking two business apps together in that relationship. That was similar to what you did in the model in your slide, where you said, okay, all these business apps, they sprung up over time. They're now going to be put in this so-called platform. And I'm pointing out that may be one of the ways that it can be done, because you were not very clear on how exactly you do that. Like, do you do that through apps rats where you basically consolidate, right? And then it becomes part of that platform? Do you buy another application that is a platform app that now all this functionality goes and gets rebuilt on that? And then it continues because there's another scenario where you have this attribute that Mark Bodman had talked about, where business apps uses reference attribute to business apps. And that is not the same as when you create some of the, business app consumes application service, business service offering, technical service offering, depends on the application service. So those relationships are created when you're filling out your CSDM. I'm just curious about this user's reference attribute. How is that different in this business application to business application relationship that you mentioned? And how is that different than using the architecture type field for platform and platform host? And it was a lot, but really, you really made me start thinking with that one, or those few slides that you presented this, which was very well done. Thank you.
Right, thank you. You're going into a lot more detail than I would normally go into. So I'm not quite able to answer the question to the technical level that you've asked it. If I stay at my abstract sort of level, we're talking about fragmented processes, yeah? So if we look at it just from an enterprise architecture perspective, give you an analogy from a place I used to work. I used to work for a housing association over here in the UK, so a place that provides houses to people who can't afford them. And they had a process which they asked me to look at, which was how they send maintenance teams out to do maintenance and clear up rubbish outside people's homes. You'd think it would be quite simple. They've managed to make it incredibly complicated to the point where when I mapped it out, I found that they were using 18 different applications and spreadsheets in between to pass information about the homeowner, their address, what needed to be done, and across into the maintenance staff, and then they got to pass this information around each other to schedule things and then to send somebody out to go do the task, come back and report back on it. And because they made it so complicated, the whole process took over a week instead of just taking a day. So what I'm saying is, rather than, when I work with customers who are doing rationalization, they tend to think, oh, this process is in this application, I'll just move that over there. What I'm saying is widen out the scope to a whole end-to-end process, look at all the different applications that are being used in that, and see if that whole end-to-end process can be re-engineered into something which is more efficient before moving it into the platform. So taking all those different fragments and bringing them together into something better and recreating that creating that on the platform rather than recreating the mess that was there before. Does that make it clearer?
Yeah. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. I mean, that's easier said than done, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, but it's kind of essential. Otherwise, we end up with a situation, I'm sure you've seen it in other places as well, where people will say, let's move this onto a platform, and they'll end up recreating exactly the bad situation they had, but in a different place. Whenever we have.
Sorry, I was just say your answers are very strategic, high level, and appreciated. And I think mine were more tactical with regards to how how ServiceNow built things to make all those connections. But I'll pursue that in another avenue to get a more precise technical piece on. There's how you should do it from what you just explained, and that makes sense. And it's very difficult to do. I think people conceptualize all those more moving parts and how to redo the whole thing. And then there's what ServiceNow has provided in the platform for you to actually visualize that by making all the connections. So I need to pursue that further. Thank you.
Yeah, with regards to visualization, I think that we are doing something, there's something coming up where there's a connection into lucid charts, so things will be becoming more visual soon on the platform. But we
Hey,
are...
Michelle, I might be
Yeah.
able to help a little bit with that.
Oh,
First of all,
okay.
Louis, do you have a platform architect
Yes, we do.
or an enterprise architect? Sorry, that's who I meant
Yes.
to say.
Mhm.
You might reach out to them. We do some CSDM workshops that we can help you with what that would look like, because if we use ServiceNow as an example, that's a perfect use case of how do you look at an entire process and what is a process versus a service. And I think we can help you with that. It's a lot more than we could answer in 3 minutes. I just wanted to give you a place to go help. And if they get stuck, feel free to have them reach out to me, Rachel Trombetta, your enterprise architect, and we'll help get them connected.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Michelle, I want to be mindful of time. You've got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah. So there's a question here of my use of the word platform, whether it's specific to ServiceNow more generically. When I say moving it onto the platform or using a package on the platform, I'm talking about ServiceNow. But if you're talking about if you're talking about how to map platforms together and visualize them, then any platform that is connected to the Now platform could be mapped and created into a visualization of an application landscape.
And then,
Okay.
Michelle, one other thing, when we were talking about drawing out, have you seen how InSpy, who's one of our partners, does the actual drawing of the visualization layer that then overlays on top of CMDB?
Yes.
Okay, that might be something, Louis, to take a look at.
Yeah, so all of the enterprise architecture tools I mentioned will do that. So InSpy has their own notation. BizDesign would use Archimate. I recently created an Archimate model of the CSDM, which is gave that to BizDesign, which is where the integration app has come from. So there's different ways of mapping out and visualizing. Often when you take the enterprise architecture data and you put it into a more visual form, it really does help you to do analysis. It helps you to see the patterns and the trends that you can't just see in a list of data. So I do encourage you, whatever you're using, whether you're using an EA tool or just Visio, just please map things out and get that, really do get the value in the visualization, so you can see what's going on.
Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for your time today. And Michelle, great content. I always learn something everything that you present. We will be posting this video when John gets back, because he's the only one I think that knows how to do this unless it's dynamic. And stay tuned. In 2 weeks, we'll have another topic and send that out to all of you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cheers.